All right, so I've been scrolling through the internet's confession booth again, and I found some stories that genuinely made me stop mid scroll. We've got secret double lives, a guy with a very specific hobby involving other people's closets, a dog dilemma that's going to split the comment section in half, and a breakup line so cold it deserves its own villain arc. Grab something to drink because some of these are going to make you mad. A couple might make you laugh when you shouldn't, and at least one is going to make you check your own relationship in the mirror. Let's get into it. Here's a question for you before we even start. How long is too long to keep a secret from someone you claim to love? A week? A month? A year? This next poster, a woman in her mid-20s, thought she'd found her person. New guy, moved to her city, sparks flying. The whole thing felt like it was building towards something real. But early on, he mentioned an ex from back home. Someone he swore was just a friend. Nothing serious. Ancient history.
Except ancient history was apparently texting him daily. She brought it up once. He reassured her. She let it go, the way a lot of us do when we want something to work out badly enough. Then, mid-argument one night, he let it slip that if he still lived in his hometown, he probably would have ended up with the other woman instead. Think about that for a second. He basically told his own girlfriend she was the backup plan, and then acted surprised when that comment landed like a grenade. He apologized, promised he'd cut contact, and for a while, things seemed fine.
Fast forward almost a year, and she's at his apartment while he's at work. His laptop is just sitting there, unlocked, practically begging to be opened. And look, I'm not going to pretend snooping is the moral high ground here. It's not. But sometimes the universe hands you a receipt you weren't looking for, and you can't unsee it. What she found wasn't nothing. Video calls, late-night check-ins, a message from days before their very first date where he told this other woman he loved her. Meanwhile, he's out here building a relationship with someone else entirely. Here's the part that gets me, though. It's not even the big betrayal that stings the most in these situations. It's the tiny stuff. She noticed he saved this other woman's photos, but never saved a single one of hers. That detail is almost worse than the video calls, honestly, because it tells you where his attention actually lived, even while he was physically present with someone else. Now he's remorseful, crying, apologizing, swearing he's been faithful for months. And maybe that's even true. People can change. But here's my honest take. Trust isn't just about whether someone stops doing something. It's about whether you can ever fully believe they won't start again the second things get hard. If someone lied to you for the entire foundation of your relationship and only stopped once they thought they'd never get caught, is that really growth? Or is that just better hiding? I don't think this is unforgivable. People mess up early in relationships and figure themselves out. But I do think she's allowed to walk away without feeling guilty about it. Would you stay after finding that laptop? Because I genuinely don't know if I could. That story left a bad taste in my mouth, not gonna lie. But the next one? Somehow stranger, and in a completely different way. Story 2. The Closet Confession. Some Reddit post you read and immediately understand why the person is anonymous. This one comes from a guy who spent years working as a professional house sitter. On paper, he sounds like a dream hire. Spotless house when you get back, laundry done, mail sorted, plants watered. The kind of guy homeowners recommend to their friends without hesitation. But he wasn't just watching the dog and grabbing the mail. He was going through people's closets, trying on their clothes, standing in front of their mirrors in outfits that weren't his, in houses that weren't his, while the actual owners were hundreds of miles away, trusting him completely. And the wildest part? He says this has been happening since high school.
sneaking into rooms at parties, and it just evolved into a business model. He gets hired specifically because he's trustworthy, and he uses that trust as a private dressing room. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating about this one, separate from the obvious ick factor. This is a story about the gap between reputation and reality. Every single person who hired this guy would swear up and down he's reliable. That's the scary part of trust. It's built on what you can observe, not what actually happens when nobody's watching. He says he's not looking for advice, just wanted to get it off his chest, and that looking back, it feels wrong. Cool. Very reassuring for anyone who's ever left this man a key. I'm not going to sit here and act like trying on clothes is the worst thing a person could do in someone else's home. It's not violent, nobody's getting hurt in the traditional sense, but it is a massive violation of privacy. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that should make everyone rethink who they're handing house keys to. Reviews and references only tell you what someone wants you to know.
Moving on, because we need a palate cleanser. And unfortunately, the next story doesn't really provide one. Story 3. A dog, a diagnosis, and a very cold parent. This next one is going to be divisive, so bear with me. A father writes in about his family's golden retriever, 13 years old, who'd been declining for a while. Seizures, dehydration, the kind of symptoms that make you start having the conversation nobody wants to have. A vet floated the idea of a kidney transplant that might buy the dog a couple more years. The dad didn't even ask about the cost. In his mind, the decision was already made. It was time. His son, on the other hand, wanted to fight for the dog no matter what it took, even suggesting they take out a loan. Now, here's where I actually land on the dog part of this story. Euthanizing a suffering animal is not cruelty. It's often the kindest option on the table. A 13-year-old golden retriever having seizures and struggling to stand is not living comfortably, transplant or not. If anything, prolonging that for a few extra years because a kid isn't ready to say goodbye can be more about the parent avoiding conflict than about what's actually best for the dog. So on that front, I get it. I might have made the same call. But here's where this story goes sideways for me. The dad took the dog to be put down while his son was at school, without telling him, and then lied about how it happened when the kid got home. Framed it as a sudden seizure instead of a decision. And he admits, flat out, that he did it because he didn't want to deal with his son's emotions. That's the part that turns this from reasonable pet owner to man who doesn't want a parent. Grief is not an inconvenience you're allowed to schedule around. A kid losing a pet he's had since he was 4 years old is one of the biggest emotional events of his childhood. And instead of being there for that, his dad engineered a version of events specifically to avoid having to witness it. You can make the right call about the dog and still handle the human part of it terribly. Those are two separate issues, and I think a lot of people commenting on this post are going to conflate them. Don't. Okay, we need something a little lighter before the next heavy one. Buckle up, because this next story is about someone lying to escape their own marriage, just not in the way you're thinking. Story 4. The Fake Business Trip. Picture this. You've worked from home with your spouse for 5 years. Same house, same rooms, same everything. All day, every day, for half a decade. No commute to decompress in. No office small talk as a buffer. Just the two of you, permanently. This woman reached a breaking point most people would never admit out loud. She started to feel like she was disappearing inside her own marriage. Not because her husband did anything wrong, just because there was no space left that belonged only to her. So she lied. Told him work required a multi-day trip out of town. Packed a bag like it was real. Drove 3 hours to a hotel, alone, and just existed there for a few days.
No calls to check on her, nobody needing anything. Just silence on her own terms. And honestly, I understand the craving. Constant togetherness, even with someone you love, can feel suffocating in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. There's something almost primal about needing a locked door with your name on it, even temporarily. But here's where I push back on her a little. She openly admitted that if she'd asked for this honestly, her husband probably would have said yes. He just would have felt hurt about it. And instead of letting him feel that discomfort, she decided to protect him from it by lying instead. That's not actually protecting him. That's protecting herself from an uncomfortable conversation and calling it kindness. There's a difference between needing space and being unwilling to have an honest conversation about needing space. She chose secrecy because it felt cleaner than vulnerability. And I get why. Vulnerability is hard. But that doesn't make the lie okay. If your solution to feeling smothered in a marriage is deception rather than communication, the actual problem might not be lack of space. It might be a marriage where honest conversations feel too risky to have. That's worth sitting with. This next one hit differently for me, and I think it's going to hit differently for a lot of you too. A woman describes herself as someone who gives constantly in relationships, not because she was asked to, but because giving is how she learned to feel safe. She grew up without much, sometimes without enough food, and she built an identity around making sure the people she loves never feel that same lack. For a while, that generosity was appreciated. Her partner, someone who came from a genuinely difficult and emotionally distant upbringing, slowly opened up to her care after being closed off for most of his life. That part is actually kind of beautiful, if you think about it. Two people with rough starts finding a version of safety together. But somewhere along the way, appreciation quietly turned into expectation. She's now covering rides, covering meals, covering things that were never her responsibility to cover, and getting little to no acknowledgement for any of it. And this isn't even the first relationship where this exact pattern is played out. Here's the uncomfortable truth in this story. Sometimes the people we pick aren't the problem. The pattern is. If this has happened more than once in more than one relationship, it's worth asking what's actually being repeated here. Is she choosing people who take advantage, or is she training every partner to take advantage by never enforcing a limit? I don't think this makes her a bad judge of character. I think it makes her someone who confuses being needed with being loved, which is an incredibly common and painfully human mix-up. But needing someone and valuing someone are not the same thing, and only one of those actually respects you. If you're the friend who always drives, always pays, always shows up first and leaves last, ask yourself honestly whether the people around you would do the same for you without being asked. If the answer makes you flinch, that's your answer. All right, shifting gears completely. This next one isn't sad, it's just funny, and we all need a break. Story 6, the IQ test nobody asked for. Quick one, because sometimes the internet just delivers pure comedy without meaning to. Some guy posted that he got an IQ test done and scored a 78. Technically, just a couple points above the threshold some tests use for intellectual disability. His reaction? Total deadpan acceptance. Didn't spiral, didn't argue with the results, just sort of shrugged and accepted his fate. Then he followed up his own post by saying someone in the comments told him he's basically Forrest Gump maxing, and that this actually made him feel better. Genuinely one of the healthier reactions to a rough diagnosis I've seen on this app. No ego, no denial, just vibes. 10 out of 10 attitude, honestly. Story 7, the ambitious dreamer who won't pivot.
This next story is a slow burn, And it's the kind of thing that's going to make some of you defensive, depending on which side of it you relate to. A woman in her 30s writes about her partner, who's spent roughly a full decade, pouring money, energy, and identity into a business that has never actually taken off. He started it with borrowed and inherited money before their relationship even began, and she fell for the person underneath the struggle, assuming things would eventually click into place. They haven't. She suspects he might have some form of neurodivergence that makes him excellent at the operational side of the business, but completely unable to sell or grow it. She's offered to support him retraining, going back to school, pivoting to literally anything else. He won't.
And here's what stood out to me. She's not describing a lazy person. She's describing someone deeply committed to a vision that simply isn't working, who's mistaking persistence for progress. Those are not the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most quietly devastating things a person can do to the people who love them. She says she'd be fine scraping by if that's what fulfillment looked like for him, but she's watching multiple friends live through the exact same scenario. Partners who left stable jobs to find themselves, spent down savings that could have gone toward a home or a future, and now can't contribute to shared life goals at all.
I actually don't think she's wrong to want stability. Wanting a partner who can financially co-pilot your life isn't shallow, it's practical. At the same time, I don't think it's fair to paint every man chasing a dream as some kind of red flag pattern. Plenty of people pursue passion projects and still show up for their relationships. The real issue here isn't ambition, it's the refusal to reassess. There's nothing wrong with chasing a dream for a year, 3 years, even 5. But at some point, if the numbers never move and you won't even discuss a plan B, that's not commitment anymore. That's avoidance wearing commitment's clothes. She's allowed to love who he is and still decide she wants a different life. Those two things can both be true at once. And honestly, more people need to hear that it's okay to walk away from someone you genuinely love because the life they're offering isn't the one you want.
Last one for today, and honestly, it might be the coldest thing in this entire video. Story 8. I'm putting you in your place. I want you to imagine telling your partner something you thought was a compliment, that they have the build of a marathon runner, and having that comment weaponized against you less than 24 hours later. That's exactly what happened to this poster. A 22-year-old who made an offhand positive comment about her boyfriend's physique. No insult intended, just a passing observation. He got weirdly irritated by it in the moment, but she figured it had blown over.
It hadn't. The very next day, she mentioned she'd had a rough gym session and ended up getting sick during her workout. Instead of asking if she was okay, the bare minimum response to someone telling you they threw up exercising, he brought her comment back up and used it to mock her. Told her she couldn't even handle one workout, despite calling him a marathon runner. And then he said the line that should honestly end the relationship on its own. I'm not comparing, I'm just putting you in your place. Let's just sit with that phrase for a second. Putting you in your place is not something you say to someone you consider your equal. It's something you say to someone you feel threatened by and want to remind that they're beneath you. That's not a boyfriend being petty. That's a power move disguised as banter, and it reveals a lot more about how he actually sees her than one bad joke ever could.
As if that wasn't enough, he then withheld cherries from her, something she'd mentioned loving the day before, specifically as a punishment, in the middle of an argument, like she was a child being sent to time out instead of an adult he supposedly loves. Here's my honest take. You can tell a lot about a relationship by watching how someone behaves when they feel embarrassed. Some people get quiet. Some people apologize. This guy chose to escalate, humiliate, and punish,
over a compliment. If this is how he responds to feeling slightly insecure, imagine how he'd respond to an actual conflict. She's already thinking about ending it, and honestly, I don't think she needs anyone's permission to do that. When someone tells you they're putting you in your place, believe them. And then put yourself somewhere far away from that place entirely.
And that's everything for today. Some of these stories made me want to reach through the screen. A couple made me laugh when I probably shouldn't have. And at least one made me reevaluate what I'd consider a deal breaker. Let me know in the comments which story got under your skin the most. I have a feeling it's not going to be unanimous. See you in the next one.